The night sky was quiet and cold above the dry wastelands of the old world where no one lived anymore. Only sand and bones remained in that part of Earth. The wind howled and the stars above were sharp like ice in the black sky, but Jace was used to the silence. He walked with slow steps through the dust-covered ground, his boots sinking into the soft sand. He carried a light on his shoulder and a bag filled with tools, wires and small machines, broken but valuable. He was a scavenger. He searched the dead land for anything useful, anything the cities left behind after the Great Wars. He was alone by choice and trusted no one, not after what happened to his family years ago. His small camp was hidden near the edge of an old mining tunnel, deep enough to stay out of the patrol scanners and far enough to keep strangers away. That night something changed. As Jace climbed a rocky hill to scan the horizon, he saw a flash in the sky like a falling star, but brighter and closer. It moved fast, leaving a burning trail behind it, and then came the sound, a deep roar that shook the ground below his feet. He watched the light crash far in the distance behind the red hills of the wasteland. Then silence returned, only the wind and dust again. Jace stood still, eyes fixed on the horizon. He knew that was not a meteor, the way it moved, the colors, the way it broke through the clouds. That was a ship, and from the glow of it not a human one. He hesitated for a moment, then grabbed his bag and started walking toward the crash. He had seen strange things before, but something told him this was different, something dangerous, or maybe something valuable. Either way, he had to know. The walk was long, the night colder than before, and the sandstorm began to rise. As he reached the area where the ship had fallen, pieces of metal were scattered across the ground, strange shapes with glowing edges and marks he could not read. He moved slowly, scanning the wreck with his light. Then he heard it, a soft sound like breathing or crying coming from behind a broken wing of the ship. Jace stepped closer and found her there, barely conscious, blood like green fire dripping from her shoulder, her skin pale blue and glowing, her eyes large and silver with tears. She looked at him and tried to speak, but no words came, only pain and fear. She was Allery, one of the alien kind who once fought against humans during the border wars. Now they lived behind walls and rules, never crossing into Earth space and never welcomed here. But this one, she was alone and broken and dying. Jace looked around thinking someone else might come, but there was no one, only the wind and the wreckage, and her eyes staring at him with something between fear and hope. She was young, maybe even younger than him, and he knew what would happen if anyone found her. The patrols would kill her without question, and maybe him too for helping. He knelt beside her and reached for her hand. It was cold and shaking. She whispered something in her language and coughed, green blood on her lips. Jace looked at her wound. It was deep and burning from the inside. She needed help fast, or she would die here in the sand like a broken machine. He had a choice to make. He could walk away, pretend he never saw her, leave her for the patrols or the scavenger wolves that followed the smell of blood, but something in him said no, not this time, not again. He remembered his sister dying in a war hospital, alone, afraid and left behind. He could not do that again, not even to an alien. So Jace took off his jacket and wrapped it around her, then lifted her slowly into his arms. She was light and weak, her breathing shallow. He carried her back through the storm, his eyes scanning the sky for drones and patrol lights. Every sound made him stop and listen, but no one followed. He reached his camp before dawn, the sky starting to turn gray behind the hills. He opened the metal hatch and climbed down into the tunnel below, placing her on an old mattress near the heater he had built from scrap. He cleaned her wound with water and old cloth and gave her air from a stolen tank. It was not perfect, but it would keep her alive for now. She looked at him with tired eyes and tried to speak again. This time he understood one word, her name, Sira. Jace nodded and sat beside her, watching as her eyes closed and her breathing slowed, not enough to be safe but enough to give him hope. He had no idea what she was running from or why she crashed here, but he knew one thing for sure. He had done something no one else would, and there was no turning back now. The sun rose slowly over the wastelands, its dull light spreading across the empty sand and broken hills like a quiet warning. The heat followed close behind, burning away the morning cold and waking the wild machines that roamed in silence, looking for scraps, looking for sound, looking for life. But under the sand, inside a long-forgotten mining tunnel, Jace sat in the dark, listening to the slow breathing of the alien girl who should not be here. Her name was Sira. She had said it only once, her voice small and soft like a bird afraid to sing. Jace had not asked again. He could tell speaking hurt her. He could see the pain in her eyes each time she moved, her shoulder wrapped in cloth, burned from the inside by something not natural. He had used every drop of water to clean the wound. He had no real medicine, only old things stolen or traded from broken places, old bandages, old wires, old filters and pieces of gear no longer trusted by anyone who still lived in the cities. Still she lived. She opened her eyes sometimes and looked at him without fear, only confusion, maybe wonder, maybe sorrow. Jace did not ask questions, not yet. He only sat and listened to the wind above and the soft hum of the machines he had rigged to keep the tunnel warm. He checked her pulse every hour, made sure her breathing stayed even, fed her small drops of water when she was awake, and once when she reached for his hand he held it for a long time, saying nothing, thinking nothing, just holding on to something alive. Outside the world kept turning and danger moved closer each day. The black market dealer he had visited 2 weeks before had heard the same rumors others had heard: a ship crashing near the old Allery border, strange lights in the sky, voices on forbidden channel, scanners picking up life signs in places where nothing should breathe anymore. Jace had heard the talk on his shortwave radio, men in armored suits hunting for alien tech, patrols scanning every ruin, mercenaries offering rewards for live cargo or wreckage with alien marks burned into the metal. Jace knew they would come this way soon. He hid his tracks when he left the tunnel, moving only at night with thick cloth tied around his boots to leave no prints. He wore goggles to shield his eyes from patrol drones and carried a heat blocker on his back to mask his body from thermal scans. He was good at hiding, always had been. It was how he survived after the cities closed their gates and the outlands turned to dust. It was how he stayed alive while others begged at the edge of the walls, waiting to be let in. But now he was not hiding for himself, he was hiding for her. He remembered the wars, how they started over nothing and burned for years, how people like him lost everything while the rich made bunkers in the sky and called it peace. He remembered the posters calling the Allery monsters demons, things that would eat your soul and poison your water. But now as he watched Syrah sleep, her breathing slow and her face calm, he could not see a monster, only someone broken, someone left behind like him. That night he made a choice that would change everything. He needed better tools and real medicine, not the junk he had in his bag. He remembered an old shelter deep in the eastern ravine where crashed escape pods were buried under sand and metal. It was far and dangerous, full of dust, spiders and sharp winds, but there might be something left there, something made for Allery's skin, something to stop the burn inside her body. He left just after sunset, leaving Syrah with a solar light and a field radio set to blink if she moved or called. He ran across the wastelands with speed born from fear, each shadow a hunter, each sound a gun, each breath a step closer to something he could not see. He reached the ravine before midnight, climbing down into the cold belly of the earth. The air was thick with ash and broken circuits. He searched the ruins using his light slowly, carefully finding old parts and broken screens. Then behind a cracked panel he found a black case marked with the alien seal, glowing faint like the eye of a ghost. He opened it and saw a set of medpods shaped like silver seeds, made to inject healing gas into Allery blood. He smiled the first time in days. But the smile faded when he heard the voice. "You are not supposed to be here," the voice said, cold and metal behind him. He turned slowly and saw a man, tall and dressed in shadow, with red armor and a plasma stick hanging from his belt. The man wore a scanner mask with 3 eyes glowing red. He was a hunter, not from Earth, not from the city, someone worse. Jace stayed still, his heart loud in his ears. "Looking for something?" the man asked, voice too smooth, too calm. Jace shook his head. "Just looking for scrap." The man stepped forward, his mask scanning the medkit. "You found more than scrap, friend," he said, not angry, just curious. Jace knew he could not run, not with the kit, not with the man this close. So he lied. "My brother died here," he said. "He was looking for medicine. I came to take his things back." The man looked at him for a long time, then nodded once and walked away, saying nothing. Jace waited a full hour before moving again. When he returned to the tunnel, Syrah was awake, her eyes wide with fear, her skin pale and glowing, her hand clutching the blanket as if it were the last thing she could hold. He gave her the medicine and injected the silver seeds into the skin near her neck. She gasped once, then fell into sleep again, her body calming slowly, her breathing smooth, her hands no longer shaking. Jace sat beside her all night, holding the radio in one hand and a knife in the other. In the morning she spoke again, her voice stronger. "They are looking for me," she said. "They will come soon." "Who?" he asked. She looked away. "The ones who made me," she said. The air turned sharp the next night, as if the wind itself had teeth, as if something out there had begun to wake from the dead sand and broken machines and stretch its claws toward the bunker where Jace and Syrah now hid in silence. The world outside had not forgotten the crash. The sky still watched, and the voices on the shortwave grew louder, speaking of heat trails, strange signals and power spikes in the wastelands. Jace had hoped the patrols would turn back, that the sandstorm had erased the tracks he left behind, but that was not the way of hunters. They did not forget, they did not rest, they followed whispers and broken signs, and sometimes they followed scent. That evening as the sun sank behind the red hills, Jace climbed to the surface and scanned the wide horizon through cracked goggles. The wind hit his face like dry ice, carrying dust and ash in every breath. He saw movement far away, not clear, not close, just a shimmer, a shape moving against the storm, too fast, too smooth. Not a beast, not a traitor, it was something else. He went back down and sealed the hatch, locking each layer behind him with care. He found Syrah sitting up, her breathing slow but stronger. Her skin had lost some of its glow and the shaking in her hands was gone. She looked at him and said one word. "They are coming." Jace nodded and began packing tools, wires, food, water, anything they could carry. He knew the tunnels were no longer safe. The old mining shafts went deep into the hills and connected to caves forgotten by time, places with no light and no signals, perfect for hiding if they reached them before the hunters did. Syrah tried to stand but fell back weak, her voice thin like paper. "I can walk soon," she said. "You have to," he answered. "We move at dark." The hours passed slow. Jace checked the drone feeds from broken satellites above his rig, picked up 3 heat trails moving toward his sector, fast, not local, not patrol, not human. They moved like ghosts, like blades slicing through the sand, without sound, without fear. He carried Syrah through the tunnel at night, step by step, her arm around his neck, her breath warm against his shoulder. The darkness ahead was thick and wet with dust, but he had mapped these tunnels long ago. He knew where the ground cracked, where the ceiling fell, where the air turned sour, and he moved through them like a shadow. They reached the deep shaft just before dawn, the smell of rust and old gas filling the space like smoke. The air was thin and sharp but quiet, the kind of quiet that hurt the ears. Syrah sat on a stone, her back against the wall, her eyes watching the tunnel behind them. "I know who they sent," she said. Jace looked at her, waiting. "Not soldiers, not peacekeepers," she said, "but the silent ones, the ones without names. They were made to erase mistakes." "What mistake?" he asked. "Me," she said. She showed him the scar on her wrist. It was small and shaped like a circle, not a wound but a seal, a mark left by something inside her. She told him she was born in a lab, not from a family, not from a home. She was made to be a link between 2 races, Allery and human, something new, something dangerous, something that could change the war. But the others failed, their bodies broke, their minds twisted, they turned into things with no soul, and she ran before it happened to her. Now they want her back, not to heal her, not to help her, but to end her. Jace said nothing, only tightened the straps on his bag and handed her water. That night the tunnel lights flickered once, twice, then went dark, and Jace knew they had found him. He set traps along the narrow paths, old trip wires linked to flash bombs and sharp spikes hidden under cloth. He sealed the upper hatch with a lock that would burn anyone who touched it, but he knew it would not stop them, only slow them, only warn him. He told Syrah to hide deep in the back chamber, a small space behind a collapsed wall where the heat signal would not reach. He gave her the radio and told her not to speak, not to move until he came back, or until the sound stopped forever. Then he waited in the dark, blade in hand, heart quiet, breath slow. The first one came just before midnight, silent, fast, wearing armor that bent light around its body, its face covered in silver glass, its hands long and sharp like bone. Jace triggered the trap and the blast filled the tunnel with smoke and sparks. The creature fell but did not scream. It moved again, dragging itself forward without fear. Jace ran through the side path leading it away deeper into the ruins, leading it into the gas chamber where he lit a flare and closed the door behind him. The fire took the air and the thing inside stopped moving. He heard another coming from above, moving fast, clicking softly against the metal wall like teeth grinding in the dark. Jace dropped a crate of steel and crushed its arm, then slammed the gate shut and locked it with a charge wire. It howled once, then fell silent. He returned to Syrah, her face pale, her hands glowing, her eyes wide with fear. "They will not stop," she whispered. "I know," he said. "We have to leave," she said, "not run, leave this world. They will not stop until I am gone." "Where can we go?" Jace asked. "They are everywhere." She reached into her suit and pulled out a shard of glass, not normal glass. It pulsed with blue light and showed a map, not of Earth, not of the stars above, but of a space between worlds, hidden, dark, forgotten, a place where old things slept. "There," she said. "If we get there they cannot follow." "What is it?" he asked. She looked at him, not with fear now but something else, something like hope. "It is where I was born," she said, "not in the lab but in the sky, before they took me, before they made me what I am." Jace looked at the map, then at her, then at the walls around them, shaking from the force of boots and claws coming closer every second. He took her hand and stood her up. "Then we go now," he said. Together they moved into the final tunnel, the one that led to the surface, where an old shuttle lay buried under sand, its engine dead but its jump core still breathing, still alive, if only for one more flight. Behind them the sound of the hunters grew louder, closer, sharper. But they did not look back. The wind above screamed across the dunes like a wounded animal hungry for metal and blood. The sky above the wasteland was gray and angry, filled with thick clouds and ash that drifted like slow poison. The old shuttle, buried half in sand, shook with every gust like a rusted heart, still trying to beat, still trying to remember how to fly, even though its wings were broken long ago. Jace pulled the hatch open with shaking hands, his breath tight, his arms weak from carrying Syrah through the tunnels, her body burning hot like fire, wrapped in broken cloth, her skin pale and glowing with strange pulses like light moving underwater, like something inside her was waking, something that should never have been born. He placed her gently inside the cracked pod chair, brushing dust off the cracked control panel, his eyes scanning the ancient console, looking for power, for any sign of life. The jump core sat behind a sealed chamber, still humming faint and low like a distant storm, ready to rise again if given the right spark, the right chance. Syrah's head turned slightly, her silver eyes flickering like the last stars before dawn. Her lips moved, her voice thin and dry like paper tearing from the wind. "You should leave me here," she whispered. Jace shook his head, pressing buttons, wires sparking under his hands, his fingers moving fast even though fear wrapped around his chest like ice. "Not leaving," he said, "never." She coughed and something green dripped from her mouth, glowing bright before fading into the dust on her skin. The veins now shimmered blue and violet like threads of light tangled together, pulling in all directions, her body changing more with each breath, not healing, not dying, something else, something unknown. "They told me I would not live past the fusion," she said. "They told me the others died screaming." "You are not the others," Jace said, his voice firm, his hands never stopping, still searching, still hoping. "You don't understand," she said. "I was never meant to survive. I was the last trial, the final error. They called me Zero because they thought it was the end." Jace paused for just a breath, his eyes locking on hers through the dim light. "You are not an error," he said. But she looked away, her eyes filled with something deeper than pain, something like guilt. "You helped me," she said. "No one else would, no one else should. I am not human, not Allery. I am something in between, something wrong." Jace leaned closer, placed a hand over hers, her skin burned like fire, but he did not move. "You are not wrong," he said. "You are what they fear and what they cannot control, and that is why they want you gone." Outside, the sand began to rise higher, the sky turning red with the coming storm, not just from nature but from engines that screamed across the wind like knives cutting through cloud. "They are close," she said. "They are coming now." Jace looked at the jump core, wires cut, tubes dry, the energy cell empty but not dead, not fully. He reached into his pack, pulling out the fusion clip stolen long ago from the last border outpost he had ever raided. It still held charge, not much but enough for one spark, one jump, one chance. He pushed it into place and the ship groaned like a beast waking from sleep. The lights flickered and the console lit with symbols old and strange, some human, some not. The jump path glowed on the screen, a narrow window through black space leading far from Earth, beyond patrols, beyond the Alliance, into dark territory. "This place," Syrah said, her voice shaking, "it is where they began the experiments, an old world no longer claimed, forgotten by all, hidden by the Allery behind smoke and silence, but there may be something left, something to stop what is inside me." "Then we go," Jace said without fear. He set the course, locked the sequence, the countdown began, soft beeps echoing in the cabin like a second heartbeat. The engines hummed low, the power rising like a tide ready to pull them into the stars. But before the jump could begin, the sand outside exploded into light, a blast of plasma striking the dune beside them, tearing the ground into fire. Shapes moved through the storm, tall and dark, with limbs like blades and eyes that burned without heat. The hunters had found them, not 3 this time but more, maybe 5, maybe 10. The ship's walls shook again, the outer shell denting under the force of plasma shots. The scanners beeped, warning signals flashing red across the screen. Jace ran to the old weapons panel, pulling the lever that activated the defense grid. Only half of it responded, old turrets rising from the sand, firing weak but enough to slow the approach to by a minute, maybe 2. He looked at Syrah, her body glowing brighter now, her skin shifting between colors, her breath shallow. Her eyes met his and she whispered one last thing. "If I change, if I become like them, you must not let me live." Jace said nothing, only held her face in both hands, leaned close and whispered back. "You are still Sira to me." The hunters reached the edge of the shuttle, their plasma sticks cutting through the last layer of defense, but the jump sequence was complete. The ship screamed with light, the wind turned white, everything around them vanished into sound and motion. Then came silence. When Jace opened his eyes, stars drifted past the window, not Earth, not the systems he knew. The shuttle floated above a dead planet, dark and cracked like a broken stone, its surface marked by craters and strange lines glowing faint from beneath like veins of fire trapped under glass. He checked the systems, the jump core was dead, the ship would not move again, but they were far from danger, far from the reach of the Alliance and the hunters and the laws that said Sira should never have lived. She lay quiet now, her breathing soft, her skin dim, her light no longer wild but calm. Jace stood and opened the hatch, stepping out onto the surface of the world below. The gravity weak, the air thin, the sky above black without end, but the ground was solid beneath his feet, the dust untouched for years, maybe centuries. He helped Sira walk out, her steps slow, her eyes wide as she looked around. "Here," she said, "this is where it began." Jace looked at the sky, then at her, then at the world they had reached. And he knew deep in his bones she should have died. But she did not. And because she lived, everything would change. The ground was silent beneath their feet, dry and cracked like the skin of a dying beast. The wind here did not howl, it whispered low and strange, as if voices were trapped inside it, voices from long ago buried beneath the ashes of this forgotten world. Jace helped Sira walk across the broken path, their shadows long under the alien sky where no stars shone, only a dull red glow above that made the land look like it was bleeding. They had landed in the middle of a ruined field where metal bones reached from the ground like the fingers of giants reaching toward nothing, twisted towers half buried in sand, wires hanging like vines from the sky. The shuttle behind them hissed one last time before falling silent forever. Its heart burned out from the jump, its body bent and tired, but it had brought them here, and that was enough. Sira moved slowly, her body no longer burning but still changing, her skin no longer glowing but shifting colors in soft waves, her steps uncertain but steady, her eyes wide and filled with something Jace had never seen before, not fear, not pain, something deeper, something like memory. "This place," she said, "this is where they built the first lab, the first gate. They said it was a gift, a new future. They said we would end the war by becoming something more, but I remember the screams, I remember the ones who did not survive." Jace looked around, scanning the ruins for signs of life or danger, his rifle ready, his eyes sharp, but everything was still. The only movement came from the wind and the dust dancing between the bones of the dead machines. "We need shelter," he said, "food, water, cover from the radiation. This world is quiet, but we cannot trust quiet." They found a tunnel beneath a broken platform hidden by metal plates covered in rust. Jace pulled them aside and helped Sira climb down. The steps were cracked and steep, the light fading fast behind them. The tunnel led into darkness, thick and cold, where the walls pulsed faintly with alien energy, a soft blue glow like veins under skin. They reached a chamber deep below the surface, a control room or maybe something else. Old screens blinked weakly when Jace touched them, symbols appearing that he could not read, maps, charts, recordings, pieces of something long buried. Sira stepped forward, her hand hovering over the screen. It responded to her touch, lighting up brighter, showing a model of a body not fully Allery, not fully human, something mixed, something unstable. The notes flashed quickly, unreadable but clear in meaning. Experiment active, subject 0, status unknown. "That was me," she said. "I was the last attempt before the program was shut down. The others became monsters, their minds lost, their bodies twisted. They called it failure, but I lived, I escaped. They never knew why." Jace stared at the screen, then at her, her face calm but her voice shaking. "You are not a monster," he said, "not then, not now." She looked at her hands glowing again under the chamber light and whispered, "I do not know what I am." The system blinked again, showing a door on the far side of the chamber, locked, sealed with code. Jace walked to it, scanning for a way in his fingers, tracing the keypad, then stepping back when it opened by itself with a low hiss. Inside was a lab filled with dust and silence, glass tanks, cracked machines broken, but in the center stood a single pod, still powered, still glowing, faint a pulse inside like a heartbeat trapped in metal. Syrah walked toward it slowly, her hand reaching out, her breath catching in her throat. "It is calling to me," she said. "I do not know why, but it knows me." Jace stood behind her ready for anything, but nothing happened, only the soft hum of the pod and the glow that grew stronger with each step she took. She touched the glass and the pod opened slowly, revealing a figure inside, not alive, not dead, a mirror of her same face, same skin, same eyes closed in eternal sleep, a twin or maybe a clone frozen in time, the first attempt, maybe the failed one, maybe the original. Syrah fell to her knees, her hands trembling, her voice barely a whisper. "They made me from her, or maybe they made her from me. We were never meant to be people, only tools, only weapons." Jace knelt beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder, feeling the heat rise from her skin again, the change coming faster now. Then the ground shook, not from the planet but from something above, something approaching, engines loud and sharp breaking the silence like thunder splitting the sky. The hunters had followed them across space, across death. They would not stop, they could not stop. Jace grabbed his pack, pulling out what little gear he had left, placing power cells into the old defense system, wiring traps at the entrance, setting charges in the walls, buying time, seconds, maybe minutes. Syrah stood now, her body glowing brighter than before, her eyes filled with tears but also with fire. "I cannot run anymore," she said. "I have to face what I am." Jace turned to her, his face hard, his voice low. "Then we face it together." The first blast hit the tunnel, shaking the walls, dust falling like snow, the outer door melting from plasma heat. Jace fired through the smoke, hitting one hunter in the chest. The second leaped through, claws slicing through air, but Syrah raised her hand and the air bent around her, a wave of force throwing the creature back into the wall with a crack like thunder. More came, 5, 6, maybe more, but Syrah stood in front of the pod, her body now shining with light, her skin no longer Allery, no longer human, something new, something made from both and more. She raised her hands and the room pulsed with energy, machines coming to life, the pod behind her closing again, sealing the other version of her inside for reasons even she could not explain. Jace reloaded, fired again, smoke and sparks filling the air, his body bruised, bleeding, but standing. As long as she stood he would stand too. Then came the moment, the shift that changed. The air went still, the light in the room turned white and all sound vanished like the world held its breath. Syrah stepped forward, her voice no longer weak, no longer unsure. "I am not your weapon," she said to the hunters. "I am not your mistake, I am not your ghost." And with one motion her hands opened and the light burst outward, swallowing the room, the hunters, the machines, everything turned to light and then to dust. When it was over, Jace stood alone for a moment, eyes wide, ears ringing. Then he saw her still there, breathing alive, her body calm, her face peaceful. "You are more than an alien," he said. She looked at him and smiled for the first time. "I think I am finally alive," she said. The wind outside had gone quiet, but the silence was not peace, it was the silence after something ends or before something worse begins. The surface of the planet lay still under a red sky, cracked and dry like an old scar, no longer bleeding but never healed. Syrah stood at the edge of the broken platform, her eyes watching the horizon where no sun rose and no moon moved, just the stillness of a world that once held life and now held only memory. Jace walked beside her, bruises on his arms, blood dried on his cheek, his rifle strapped to his back, barely holding together after the fight. His breath was slow, his eyes tired but alert, always watching the shadows, even here, even now, because nothing stayed quiet for long, not in the worlds they knew, not in the worlds they had left behind. The battle was over, the hunters gone, their remains turned to dust by something not born of fire or plasma but of will and light, something inside Syrah, something ancient, something awake now. Jace did not speak at first, he just watched her, watched the way the wind moved through her hair, the way her skin pulsed faintly with color, soft and shifting like the surface of deep water, and he thought not for the first time that she was no longer a girl running for her life, she was something else, something new. She turned to him, then her voice quiet but clear, "We cannot stay here, they will send more, not today, not tomorrow, but they will come, they always do, and I cannot fight forever, not like this, not when I do not even know who I really am." Jace nodded and opened the map she had shown him before, the shard of glass that held a path through black space lines drawn through forgotten systems, through debris fields and old war zones, a route no human ship dared follow, a route that led to the center of forbidden space, the place marked in red on every Alliance chart, the place called the Hollow. He looked at her, then looked at the sky and said, "If we go there we do not come back. No one has ever come back." "Maybe that is what we need," she said, "not to come back. Maybe we are not meant to." They gathered what they could from the ruins, pieces of gear-old rations, a power cell still holding charge, enough to restart the shuttle, enough for one more flight, maybe two. The air was thin but breathable for now. The ship groaned as Jace reactivated the console, the lights flickering, the engine stuttering, but they held. They rose from the cracked ground and drifted into the sky. The stars above were sharp and distant like blades scattered across black velvet. Jace set the course and watched as the jump drive warmed again, slower than before, older now but willing. The ship turned toward the edge of known space, toward the Hollow. The journey took 3 jumps, each one longer than the last and each one harder on the ship. Metal groaned and wires sparked, lights blinked and warnings screamed, but they pushed forward through asteroid fields and silent wrecks, past stations without power and satellites that no longer spoke. The map glowed faint now, the path shorter, the end closer. On the second night Jace found Syrah sitting in the dark, her eyes closed, her face calm, her hands glowing faintly as if she were listening to something deeper than thought. He sat beside her, not speaking at first, just watching the stars slide past the window like slow falling snow. She spoke without opening her eyes. "I feel them now, the others, the ones who came before me, echoes in the dark. They reach for me, they whisper, sometimes they show me flashes, images, a place of fire, a place of sleep, a place that was never meant to be found again." "Do you trust them?" he asked. "I do not know," she said, "but I trust you." He said nothing, only reached out and took her hand, her fingers warm, strong, steady. On the 4th day they reached the Hollow, a stretch of space darker than the rest, where even starlight seemed to bend and vanish. The ship drifted through the silence, passing through broken rings and shattered moons, the path marked by wreckage, ancient ships torn apart by something not seen, not explained. Jace checked the scanners, found nothing, then found something, a signal, old and weak but alive. Syrah pointed toward it, her eyes wide, her voice full of something close to fear. "That is it," she said. "That is where I came from, or where I was taken, or where I died. I do not know anymore." The signal led them to a station hidden behind the shadow of a broken planet, not large, not active, but still there, still breathing with power, low and steady like a heartbeat long forgotten. Jace docked the ship, the airlock creaked open, dust spilling into the corridor, the lights inside blinked once then glowed blue. They stepped inside together. The station smelled of rust and old memory, the walls covered in moss that glowed in patches, the floor marked by boot prints, not fresh, not new, but human. The air was thick with silence, the kind that wrapped around the bones of old stories. They found a room at the center of the station filled with pods like the one Syrah had seen on the last world, each one cracked or dark except one, still lit, still sealed, still waiting. The console beside it flickered to life when she touched it. Lines of data filled the screen, unreadable but familiar. She stared at it for a long time, then whispered, "I think this one is me, or the first me, or the one they made before me. I do not know what they wanted, but I think it was never meant to end like this." She opened the pod and the room filled with soft white light, not harsh, not blinding, but warm and full. It wrapped around her like water, like memory, like a mother's voice. She stepped inside, not to sleep, not to hide, but to connect. The light wrapped around her body and she floated, their eyes closed, breath slow, the room glowing brighter with each moment. Jace watched, unsure, afraid, but unwilling to stop her. Something inside him said this was what she needed, what she had always needed to remember or become or release. Then the light faded and she stepped out, her feet silent on the floor, her body no longer glowing, no longer pulsing, her face calm, her eyes deep. "You came back," he said. "I never left," she answered. "I just did not know where I was." Outside the station the Hollow began to change, stars blinking into life, shapes moving in the dark, old machines waking, voices returning one by one, not angry, not loud, just present, just aware. They were not alone. Jace looked at her and asked, "What happens now?" "We show them," she said, "that we are not errors, not weapons, not ghosts, we are what comes next." And in that moment, under the light of a place no one returned from, he believed her. The hollow was no longer silent, no longer forgotten. The stars around the broken station pulsed like eyes opening for the first time in centuries. The air inside the station was thick with energy, not fire, not light, but something in between, something that moved like thought, something that hummed like a song too old to remember but too strong to forget. Jace stood at the observation window, his eyes locked on the dark void beyond, where shapes drifted in slow motion, some large, some small, all wrapped in shadow like ancient things waking from sleep. Behind him Syrah moved without sound, her steps soft, her face calm, her body no longer glowing, no longer burning, her skin smooth and cool like still water, her eyes deeper than before, shining with something new, not just memory, not just power, but purpose. She stopped beside him, her hand reaching out, touching the glass where cracks ran like veins across the frame. "They are listening," she said, "not with ears, not with machines, but with something older. I do not know what they are, not fully alive, not fully dead, just here like me." Jace nodded, not in fear, not in confusion, but in trust, because everything about her now felt true, everything about her felt real. Even when the world around them had stopped making sense, she still stood, she still chose. The control panel blinked behind them, one last signal flashing, weak but steady, not from Earth, not from the Alliance, but from a rogue vessel, a scavenger ship that had followed the old jump path, trying to find what others could not, trying to take what others had failed to reach. It sent no message, only presence, only warning. They had been found again. "We cannot run again," Jace said. Syrah looked at him, her expression still and strong. "We do not need to." She led him down the hall, past the pods, past the broken glass and old walls, toward a sealed chamber at the heart of the station. The door opened with a hiss, not mechanical but organic, like breath being held then released. Inside, the room was round and empty except for a single chair, shaped not by hand but by energy. It floated just above the floor, pulsing slowly like a heartbeat. "This is where it started," she said. "This is where they made me. This is where I must decide." Jace stepped forward, his voice low. "What decision?" She turned to face him, her eyes soft, her voice steady. "I can leave this place with you, return to the edge, live in shadow, always hiding, or I can stay and connect to this system, to this memory, to this power, and send a message not just to the stars but to every world that fears me." He looked at the chair, then at her, then at the shadows moving beyond the walls, shapes pressing closer, the rogue ship drawing near, scanners activating, weapons charging, the old story repeating again. "If you connect, what happens?" he asked. She walked to the chair, her fingers trailing along its edge, the glow rising under her touch. "I become the signal," she said. "I become the voice of what they tried to erase, not a weapon, not a monster, but a bridge between what was and what could be. If I stay, I do not die, but I do not return either. I stay here forever, part of the hollow, part of the truth." Jace stepped closer. He could see it now. The station was not just a place, it was a mind, a memory. It had watched the galaxy forget it, and now it asked for one voice to remember, for one voice to stay. "You do not have to do this," he said. But she smiled, not sad, not afraid. "I want to," she said, "because if I do, others like me will know they are not alone, because if I do, the war ends here, not with blood but with choice." He wanted to stop her, wanted to say more, but the walls shook again. The rogue ship now visible through the main viewport, sharp and silver and full of hunger. They were out of time. So Jace took her hand one last time and said only one thing. "I will remember you." And she stepped into the chair and the light rose. It was not fire, it was not heat, it was understanding. It wrapped around her like water, pulling her into the station, into the hollow, into the deep memory of all that had been and all that could be. And when it was done, there was no scream, no silence, only peace. The rogue ship reached the station but found no target, no enemy, only a signal, clear and strong, not a warning, not a threat, only words spoken in 1,000 languages, across every channel, across every system. "We are not your monsters, we are not your tools, we are not your ghosts, we are what comes next." And then the ship turned and left, not in fear but in thought, and slowly across the galaxy others heard the same message, and they paused and they listened. Jace remained at the edge of the hollow, his ship old and weak but alive. He floated near the station, now quiet, now calm, watching the stars shift, watching the light change. He built a beacon using scrap, using memory, using hope, and he sent out the signal again and again, not to ask for rescue, not to call for war, but to remind the stars that something beautiful had lived here once and maybe still did. Time passed, ships came and went, some curious, some afraid, none stayed long, but they all heard the voice and none could deny what it made them feel. And across the galaxy children with strange eyes and strange hands stopped hiding, and mothers who had lost sons in the war began to ask different questions, and leaders who only knew fear began to listen to dreams. Jace never returned to Earth, never returned to the walls or the rules or the names they gave to things they did not understand. He stayed near the hollow, near the signal, near her. Some say he went silent after a decade, some say he became part of the station, part of the light that drifted between the stars, some say he waited still, watching for others to arrive, others who were told they should not exist, others who only needed someone to do what no one else would. But the signal never stopped, not once, not even for a moment, and the name it carried across every world, across every sky, was hers. Syrah.